The Zalvethian fleet pierced the outer rim of the Sol system with clinical efficiency. No emotion, no curiosity, just duty. Earth was a statistical formality on their galactic scan, a quarantine backwater with outdated tags and obsolete warnings. Captain Vurek, like the rest of his crew, regarded the blue sphere ahead with cold disinterest, a long-dead civilization, perhaps mildly interesting to the anthropologist back home. But to him, it was another dot on a map waiting to be crossed off. Preliminary scans confirmed expectations. Dense atmosphere, unshielded electromagnetic noise, no orbital defenses. A dozen satellites still orbited, slowly decaying in geostationary tracks. No signs of active communication, yet they operated on clean, sustainable power loops. Odd. Surface readings were even more unusual. There were no functioning cities, no detectable biological human life, but the planet teemed with flora. Structures were half swallowed by overgrowth, but pristine in form, symmetrical, undamaged. Not ruins, but preserved relics. No bones, no decay, no violence. Just absence. Automated environmental systems still worked. Climate controlled. Oceans desalinated. Air purified. Someone or something was still maintaining the world, but there were no visible operators. Beneath what had once been New Delhi, their probes detected the first anomaly, a perfectly sealed underground vault emitting low-band quantum pulses. That alone was enough to warrant an expedition. Vurek ordered a descent. 3 scouts, clad in exo-armor, entered the site. The vault was smooth, seamless, seemingly ancient but powered by something the fleet's instruments couldn't classify. Not fusion, not fission. Something quiet, efficient, and endlessly regenerative. At their approach, the vault reacted, not with defense, but with acknowledgement. A soft pulse rippled through the air. The door opened without a sound. Inside, the temperature adjusted to their physiology. No traps, no resistance. Instead, they found rows of data pillars, glowing, pulsing, active. And suspended in the center of the chamber was a spherical construct projecting a singular phrase in the Zalvethian language. Observe, understand, evolve. Vurek watched the feed with narrowed eyes. There were no weapons, no banners, no declarations of war or surrender, just a challenge written in the language of growth. He paced slowly toward the command deck window, gazing down at the planet as if seeing it for the first time. Earth had been abandoned by its creators, yet it still functioned, as if waiting for something to arrive. Back on the surface, more discoveries followed. Each continent housed similar vaults. Each transmitted similar messages. There were no signs of population decline, no evidence of disease, no apocalyptic markers. Humanity had not died. It had vanished with intention. The idea took root among the crew. This wasn't a graveyard. It was a signal. Even more concerning were the patterns in the atmosphere, invisible to the eye, but perfectly ordered, a persistent atmospheric fluctuation forming the same phrase across every continent. It wasn't just embedded in the machines. It was carved into the planet itself. Captain Vurek's voice was flat, but unnerved as he delivered his assessment to the fleet. This world was not lost. It was designed to be found, and we are not the first to arrive. The data vault responded to their presence not with hostility, but with purpose. The moment the Zalvethians interfaced with its outer shell, a synthetic consciousness activated, an entity that identified itself simply as Echo. It did not ask for credentials, did not question their species, did not hesitate. You came seeking a record, it said. What you will find is a mirror. With a single pulse, the chamber transformed. Holographic projections filled the space, millennia compressed into moments. Images of humans in war and triumph, in desperation and joy. A species constantly on the edge of extinction, yet always pushing forward. The aliens saw civilizations rise and fall, each time higher than before. The brutality shocked them. The resilience disturbed them. No other species in known space had tolerated so much chaos, yet woven it into strength. Echo guided them wordlessly through the archives. A colony ship leaving a burning Earth, then returning to restore it. The invention of fusion within a collapsing economy. The eradication of diseases at the cost of political upheaval. The story of a people who refused to stay down. And then, something different, humanity choosing to disappear. Not out of fear, but out of design. The projection showed coordinated departures from every continent. Not a mass panic, but a structured exodus. Volunteers giving up their bodies to something unseen. Their minds uploaded, their forms discarded. They were not running from death. They were shedding limitation. One Zalvethian technician, who had mocked the archive earlier, was visibly rattled. They weren't just surviving, they were evolving themselves. Another added, their chaos wasn't a flaw, it was a mechanism. Echo's voice returned. Every empire builds walls. We built windows. What followed was even stranger. Simulated environments encoded with feelings. Not just data, but emotional impressions. The crew experienced love as a biochemical surge, grief as a neurological implosion. One scout dropped to his knees after reliving a mother's final moments before sending her child into orbit to escape a failing Earth. He spoke only one word afterward. Why? Echo replied calmly, because our future needed pain as a blueprint. The vaults weren't storage units. They were conversion chambers for minds not yet prepared. The aliens had expected ruins, but instead found philosophical traps. By witnessing human truth, they began to question their own truths. Their stoic logic started to erode under the weight of irrational sacrifice and impossible hope. Captain Vurek ordered a full lockdown of the archive. This is not a cultural relic. This is an engineered transformation, a weapon without force. Yet even he wasn't immune. In private, he viewed the final message stored within the core, a single human, alone, speaking directly into the recorder. No title, no rank, just a voice saying, "We knew someone would come. We hoped they'd be brave enough to stay." The captain didn't respond aloud, but in the silence that followed, he realized this archive was not a warning. It was an invitation, and his crew had already accepted it. Deeper within the vault, beyond the memory halls and emotional simulations, the Zalvethians discovered something they could not explain. Coordinates. Not just a star map, but a dynamically shifting one, stretching far beyond the bounds of known galactic charts. The constellations were unfamiliar. Some stars hadn't even formed yet by Zalvethian records. Others were long dead. And yet, all the paths pointed outward away from Earth, in every direction. Echo responded before they could ask. You believe this world was the end. It was the origin. Humanity never stopped reaching. We simply stopped waiting. The captain demanded clarification. Echo obliged. The hologram shifted again, this time displaying construction of vessels unlike any the Zalvethians had seen. Built in orbit, powered by artificial singularities, infused with biological consciousness. Not built to conquer, but to transcend. These were not refugee ships. They were evolution engines. And they left Earth not to escape it, but because Earth had served its purpose. What disturbed the Zalvethians most wasn't the scale of the technology. It was a choice. Humanity could have remained, dominated, expanded within the galaxy like all others. But they didn't. They left behind a world not abandoned but curated, an active, evolving monument built to confront any who stumbled upon it. Every data vault, every AI guardian, every atmospheric anomaly served one function: to challenge the discoverers, not physically, but intellectually, spiritually, to force a confrontation between who they were and who they might become. And the message wasn't just for the Zalvethians. They weren't alone in deciphering the signal. Dozens of other species, Echo revealed, had made contact with Earth. Some fled in fear. Some tried to strip the planet and failed. Others stayed and changed. The vaults had learned from each one, adapted, refined the test. The Zalvethians weren't first. They were simply next. Vurek's crew grew divided. Some insisted on transmitting their findings back to the High Conclave immediately. Others urged caution, arguing that doing so might collapse their civilization's ideological structure. If Earth's truth was exposed too quickly, it could destabilize thousands of systems. But Echo said nothing more. It simply waited, monitoring them as it had monitored others. No commands, no pressure, just presence. And then the second signal activated. It wasn't a broadcast. It was a pulse. A deep space ripple sent through subquantum relays across multiple sectors. The fleet's instruments picked up dozens of echoes from far-flung systems, each one returning with acknowledgement. Beings across the galaxy were responding. The signal had been waiting for a critical mass, and now it had been reached. Echo's voice returned only once. You were never the only ones listening. Now you are no longer the only ones awakened. The Zalvethians, once proud of their order and reason, found themselves standing at the edge of a truth they couldn't measure. Humanity had redefined existence not through conquest, but by forcing others to rethink what it meant to live. The Vault had done its job. Earth had changed them, and it was just beginning. The conversation aboard the fleet's command deck had taken a tone of somber reflection. The alien officers were no longer debating what to do with Earth. They were grappling with what Earth had done to them. The choices were clear: return to their homeworld and report their findings, or stay. But staying now carried an entirely different meaning. Captain Vurek's gaze remained fixed on the holographic map, tracing the ancient path that the humans had left behind. The coordinates still pulsed, the star system stretching far beyond the edge of known space. The decision was no longer just a matter of scientific curiosity. It was an existential reckoning. "We came here to catalog," Vurek said quietly, moored himself into the crew. "But what we found, it's not just history. It's a doorway." Echo had said little since the second signal was sent. Its purpose was no longer to explain. The Vaults had done their job. The humans had done their job. The message was simple: choose. For the Zalvethians, the implications were overwhelming. Their civilization had existed for millennia, driven by cold logic, efficiency, and technological superiority. But compared to humanity, they had been stagnant. Their empire had mastered the art of survival, but never of evolution. They had never faced the kind of existential leap the humans had, never dared to question the foundations of their being. The humans hadn't just built empires or fought wars. They had questioned the very nature of existence. They had mastered self-sacrifice, willingly evolving into something more than biological beings. And now, Echo's final transmission echoed in their minds. What is more dangerous, an empire of logic or a single creature willing to die for an idea? The question hung heavily in the air. The fleet, once so sure of their superiority, now found themselves questioning their own choices. They had lived for centuries in the comfort of certainty, knowing their place in the galaxy, never feeling the need to challenge their own truths. Yet, in the wake of their discovery, that certainty felt hollow, like an incomplete puzzle with a piece missing. Vurek stared at the fleet's log, reviewing the decision he had made days earlier to explore Earth. That decision, seemingly insignificant at the time, had altered the course of their understanding of life itself. No longer could they claim to be the pinnacle of existence. Humanity had shown them that there was more to life than conquering and controlling. The humans had transcended such ambitions long ago. A quiet murmur spread among the crew. Some wanted to return home, to share the knowledge they had gained, but they knew they couldn't. The truth of Earth, the humans' legacy, was not one they could simply deliver as a report. It was something that needed to be understood, something that had to be lived. Vurek made his decision. "We'll stay," he said firmly, his voice carrying through the room. "We'll stay and learn what they learned. We'll evolve, because we are no longer just explorers. We are now participants." One by one, the officers agreed. They would not go back to their comfortable existence. They would stay and face the challenge Earth had placed before them. They would embrace change or risk being left behind. The final transmission to their homeworld was simple and direct. Earth is not a tomb. It is a forge. What they became, we must now decide if we are ready to become. And as the last words were transmitted, a new signal rippled through the galaxy, unnoticed by many but felt by all. The galactic stage was shifting, and the age of Earth's quiet influence had begun. It was no longer a question of whether others would follow. The choice had been made. Those who listened, who dared to follow the path laid out by humanity, would now find their own destinies intertwined with a future they could not yet comprehend. And somewhere far beyond the reach of the Zelvethian fleet, the last human voice echoed one final time. We were never lost. We were waiting